Before blueberries appeared in modern stores, before they were associated with scientific research or nutritional concepts, this small fruit had already existed in human life for a very long time. The origin of blueberries is closely connected to North America, where they grew wild in forests, swamps, and cold regions thousands of years ago. For the indigenous peoples of North America, blueberries were not a new discovery. They were a familiar part of the ecosystem they lived with every day. Archaeological evidence shows that blueberries were harvested and used as an important food source very early on, even before humans were familiar with the concept of cultivation or modern agriculture. They were eaten fresh, dried to preserve through the winter, and combined with other foods to maintain energy under harsh conditions. Indigenous peoples called blueberries by a simple yet vivid name, starberries or starfruit. The reason lies in the tiny calyx at the base of each blueberry, where it forms an almost perfect five-pointed star shape. For them, this was not merely a physical characteristic, it was nature leaving a sign of recognition, a subtle detail that only those who observed long enough would notice. In traditional life, blueberries were not only regarded as food, they were also used to dye fabrics, create natural color, and were considered a valuable component in folk remedies. Although there was no scientific language to describe it, indigenous peoples understood that this small fruit provided endurance, alertness, and the ability to maintain physical condition during long journeys or severe winters. Notably, for most of its history, blueberries existed entirely in the wild state. Humans did not rush to domesticate them. They were not selectively bred early like wheat or apples. They existed quietly, harvested by season, associated more with natural rhythms than with large-scale production. Only when science and modern agriculture developed did humans begin to view blueberries from a different perspective. No longer just a fruit growing in the forest, but a food that could be studied, preserved, and introduced into wider life. From that moment, the journey of blueberries entered an entirely new phase, where historical narrative gradually intersected with science. For much of history, blueberries remained a fruit of nature. Humans harvested them, but did not deeply intervene. It was not until the early 20th century that the story began to shift in a different direction, when science and agriculture met at the right moment. Around 1911, in the state of New Jersey, blueberries were domesticated systematically for the first time. This process was associated with the collaboration between Elizabeth White, a visionary grower, and Frederick Coville, a botanist who studied plant physiology in depth. They realized that blueberries could not develop like ordinary fruit trees. They required particularly acidic soil, very specific growing conditions, and needed to be properly understood before they could be cultivated on a large scale. This domestication was not intended to turn blueberries into a high-yield crop at any cost. On the contrary, it began with observing how blueberries existed in nature, then finding ways to recreate those conditions in cultivation. This approach helped blueberries retain most of their original biological characteristics rather than being forced to change too drastically. From those initial experiments, blueberries gradually moved out of the forest. They became a controlled crop, with selected varieties, defined seasons, and the ability to provide stable supply for humans. North America quickly became the largest production center in the world, not only because it was the native land of blueberries, but also because climate and soil conditions matched the natural needs of the plant. Over time, blueberries continued to expand beyond North America. Regions such as Chile and Peru, with cooler climates and seasons opposite to the Northern Hemisphere, began to strongly develop blueberry cultivation to serve global demand. As a result, blueberries were no longer a fruit that appeared only during a short season, but became a familiar food throughout the year in modern life. Importantly, even after entering large-scale production, blueberries retained the image of a fruit close to nature. They were not the result of extreme hybridization. They represented a controlled continuation of a wild species that humans learned to cultivate, rather than imposing complete transformation. This journey created the foundation for another question: When a small fruit that once existed quietly in nature is introduced into modern life on a global scale, what in its biological structure draws such human attention? To answer that, we need to look deeper into what truly lies inside each blueberry. When looking at a blueberry, it is difficult to guess what it contains inside. Its small size, light weight, and mild sweetness lead many to see it as a complementary fruit rather than a food with significant biological value. Yet precisely at this point, blueberries begin to reveal their difference. In terms of energy, blueberries belong to the low-calorie food group. In 100 grams of fresh fruit, energy is only about 57 calories, with water content accounting for up to 84%. This makes blueberries unlikely to create metabolic burden for the body. Carbohydrates are present at a moderate level, about 14.5 grams, of which natural sugars account for around 10 grams, accompanied by 2.4 grams of fiber that slows absorption and supports more stable digestive function. Alongside these are familiar micronutrients that play foundational roles. Vitamin K1 contributes to blood clotting and maintaining bone structure. Vitamin C supports the immune system and participates in cellular protection mechanisms. Manganese is a mineral necessary for many metabolic reactions in the body. Individually, these components may not stand out dramatically, but together they create a balanced nutritional base suitable for regular consumption. However, what makes blueberries special does not lie in calories or vitamins. It lies in the group of antioxidant compounds, especially anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are the pigments responsible for the deep blue-purple color characteristic of blueberries. This is not merely an aesthetic factor. It is a sign of the presence of biological compounds capable of interacting directly with oxidative processes in the body. Compared to many other fruits, blueberries have a high density of anthocyanins. This corresponds to a stronger ability to neutralize free radicals, helping reduce oxidative pressure on cells. In the context where the body, and especially the brain, faces prolonged oxidative processes with aging, the presence of these compounds becomes far more meaningful. Another notable point is the stability of anthocyanins in blueberries. Recent studies indicate that even when frozen, the antioxidant content in blueberries is not significantly reduced. This makes blueberries one of the few fruits that retain high biological value even when not in fresh form. All of these factors show that blueberries are not a food that impresses through large numbers or immediate effect. Their value lies in a streamlined nutritional structure, rich in protective compounds, and suitable for participating in quiet, long-term biological processes. From here, an important question begins to emerge. When these compounds enter the body, how do they affect the brain? When compounds in blueberries enter the body, they do not stop at general nutritional roles. A portion of them, especially anthocyanins, have the capacity to participate directly in fundamental brain mechanisms. This is the point that draws scientific attention to blueberries not as an ordinary fruit, but as a food clearly associated with cognitive function. The brain is an organ that consumes large amounts of energy and is also highly sensitive to oxidative stress. Neurons, due to continuous activity and limited regenerative capacity, are more vulnerable to damage when oxidative environments persist. Anthocyanins, with strong antioxidant properties, help ease this pressure by neutralizing free radicals before they cause cumulative damage to brain cells. Beyond antioxidant roles, research also suggests that anthocyanins may influence how neurons communicate with each other. They are associated with maintaining the flexibility of synapses, where information is transmitted within the brain. When these connections function more smoothly, processes such as memory formation, learning, and information processing become more efficient. A brain region often mentioned in blueberry research is the hippocampus, an area that plays a central role in forming and storing memories. Over time, the hippocampus tends to decline in function due to aging and biological stress. Compounds in blueberries are believed to contribute to protecting this region from prolonged oxidative effects, thereby supporting memory maintenance in older adults. It is important to emphasize that blueberries do not make the brain smarter in an immediate sense. Their effect is supportive and protective. They help the brain maintain a more stable operating environment, reduce factors that disrupt neural signaling, and create conditions for the brain to function according to its inherent capacity. Therefore, when discussing blueberries and the brain, science does not speak of miracles. Science speaks of accumulation, of reducing small injuries repeated day after day. In that long-term picture, a small fruit like the blueberry begins to hold significance, not because it transforms the brain overnight, but because it helps slow the quiet decline that unfolds gradually over the years. Although our discussion focuses on the brain, blueberries do not operate in the body along isolated boundaries. The brain, cardiovascular system, metabolism, and vision exist within the same biological network. When one factor improves, other parts often benefit indirectly. First is the cardiovascular system. The brain depends heavily on stable, oxygen-rich blood flow. Antioxidant compounds in blueberries help reduce oxidation of low-density lipoprotein cholesterol while supporting maintenance of vascular elasticity. When blood pressure and circulation are better controlled, the brain also receives a more stable nutrient supply environment, an essential condition for long-term cognitive activity. Next is blood sugar control. The brain uses glucose as its primary energy source, but it functions best when blood sugar levels remain stable. Blueberries have a low glycemic index and contain fiber that slows sugar absorption. This helps avoid strong post-meal blood sugar fluctuations, thereby reducing metabolic pressure on the brain and nervous system. Vision is another component closely linked to the central nervous system. The retina is an extension of the brain. Compounds such as anthocyanins and vitamin A in blueberries support protection of small blood vessels in the retina, helping the eyes adapt better to low light and reduce fatigue during prolonged screen exposure. A stable visual system also helps reduce the brain's processing burden in modern life. In addition, blueberries are studied in the context of muscle recovery after high-intensity activity. When the body engages in strenuous movement, oxidative stress increases not only in muscles but throughout the system. Reducing oxidative damage at the cellular level helps the body recover faster, indirectly decreasing prolonged fatigue, a factor that often negatively affects concentration and mental clarity. These benefits do not turn blueberries into a comprehensive solution for every health issue, but they demonstrate an important point. When a food effectively supports cardiovascular health, metabolism, and vision, it simultaneously creates a more favorable biological foundation for the brain. From this perspective, blueberries are not only related to memory or cognition, but also contribute to maintaining overall system stability upon which the brain depends each day. When discussing blueberries and brain health, the most important factor is not how much to eat in a single day, but how to view their role within an overall lifestyle. Blueberries are not medicine. They are not designed to reverse aging or treat neurological disorders. Their value lies in consistency and persistence. Blueberries can be consumed fresh or frozen. Recent studies show that the freezing process does not significantly reduce anthocyanin content. This means blueberries are not merely a seasonal fruit, but a food that can maintain stable presence in the diet throughout the year. This convenience makes habit maintenance more feasible, a key factor in any long-term change. More importantly, blueberries should be seen as part of a brain care ecosystem. Together with sufficient sleep, regular physical activity, and a balanced diet, the small compounds in blueberries help ease the biological pressures the brain faces daily. They do not create immediate change, but participate in minimizing small repeated injuries over time. Looking back at the entire journey of blueberries, from a wild fruit associated with the lives of indigenous peoples of North America to a food carefully studied in modern science, it becomes clear that their value does not come from exaggeration. It comes from consistency. from the ability to exist long-term in the human diet without needing to be inflated into something miraculous. Caring for the brain is not a single major decision made in one moment. It is the sum of many small choices repeated each day. Among those choices, sometimes a small, modest fruit like the blueberry becomes a reasonable part of the long-term picture. If you are interested in how food affects the brain and body over time, follow the Food Knowledge channel. There, we will continue exploring quiet yet enduring stories where science and daily life meet in familiar things.